So today's update is small, just the one package with the one Blu-ray. And at least I think it's really good. I don't know. And I don't know that this is necessarily the most exciting thing. This is One Piece Film Red on Blu-ray. So, One Piece is nice, but this is Regions A and B Blu-ray. This is a One Piece movie, and while the movies aren't necessarily bad, I think a lot of people would agree that if they don't have much to do with the actual content of the series itself, it's a little less exciting. There's definitely some neat visuals about this. I like the singing lady. I hate this plastic that just won't come off. I don't even think I got it all. Close enough. Take a peek on the inside. And the unfortunate thing is this is going to be short, so YouTube's automatic image selection stuff, which is what I the vast majority of time choose for my videos, it's not going to show this Blu-ray, even though feature film and bonus features. Interesting. And we've got the cast of characters in the back. It's hard to say, because, I guess best case you could hope that this, you learn a little bit more about Red. Was that his name? Too many names. That could be hard to name. But, even then, is it a canonical knowledge about him, or is it just seeing him? And maybe if it's just seeing him, that's kind of pleasant to people that like that. But, that means it's probably not widespread. Anyways, it's a small update this week, but here's this week's anime Blu-ray collection update. Let's see if I can go through the list really quick. Helk, Episode 1. So, the show turned out to not be as dark and depressing as I thought it might be, because it sounded like it presented a basic premise, and I think based on the trailer I thought, is this going to be about somebody who used to be a hero, but became so disgusted by humanity that he's turning on all of humanity or something? And it's not quite that. It's definitely, there's something serious going on there, but at least first episode wise, it comes off mostly lighthearted-ish, kind of. Sort of a funny joke where, the lady who seems to be the kind of person in charge keeps saying, well, it's got to be this. Oh, no, he did this. Oh, it's got to be this. No, he did this. So it's kind of a fun beginning. Guess I'll have to see where it goes from episode 1, but good start. Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, episode 13. Cute episode, I would say. I'd say really good, strong episode for our main character, just because and the show does this a lot, where it does introduce things where just it's so heartwarming to see her do the right thing, and it's usually doesn't come off as bad. And I think that's why the previous episode was also so strong, because that one was really serious business there. But this one, another new character, but maybe not as temporary a character as many of the other characters we've seen. I'd say maybe half, because there's still been a lot of characters that make recurring appearances that are kind of notable. But anyways, good episode 13. Reborn as a Vending Machine, I Now Wander the Dungeon, episode 2. It's okay, I guess. If there's anything about it I would say is a little off, I guess it would be that our main character is, while in a state that he's not able to do much, I feel like there's too much he's able to do. And some of it comes off as a little bit of a stretch for how it works. And I bet it was, if this was based off of manga, it was probably better executed in the manga, because in the anime, sort of timing of the way certain things works just makes it seem a little less believable. It's not horrible, but at the same time, I don't know. It's not bad. I guess it's just I don't feel anything I describe as particularly strong drive based on the stuff scene, I guess. And who knows, there's another episode before episode 3, and I would make a call of what it looks like at the 3-episode mark. Undead Murder Farce, episode 2. So I mentioned that the first episode was really great with the two characters and the way they interacted. Episode 1 was good with that. Episode 2, was really a question of where they were going to go with that, and whether or not episode 1 would kind of demonstrate itself as a fluke, and our main two characters are just really fun to watch. They both bring their own interesting edges to the thing, and they really, while in some ways they contrast each other, they don't feel at all like adversarial. It's like the girl, she could have very easily been a snotty, oh, I know more than everybody else, but she's not. She's just simply good at what she does. I think Hollywood should probably take note, because she's an example of an actual strong woman, because it's like, she doesn't, there's this artificial strength that does, it's not limited to just strong women, but you kind of get that feeling with a lot of the people that get pushed forward as strong women who really aren't. It's this thing where there's an attempt to try too hard to prove someone strong that kind of betrays an underlying insecurity. And you see this plenty with people like, oh yes, that person's really confident with himself. Is he now? He seems to be so insecure with himself that he's trying to pick a fight with everybody he can, and he hasn't even touched the alcohol yet. You know, there's that false strength is annoying, and she's a good example of, she's just really great to watch. And she's just a fucking head, but, sorry. It's funny, and then he's demented in a really fun way. Like, I'm not sure that he disrespects people so much as he, I don't know, I'm not sure how to put it, because it's more like things are, you know, life is kind of a game to him. I think coming from him seeing himself as not having much longer to live, and so his mindset is just kind of, whatever, I might as well have fun while I'm here doing this, kinda. And so he gets in people's head and messes with them in ways that are just like, if those people kind of had a better idea that he was doing that, they wouldn't fall for it so easily. But I don't know. And they haven't done it a whole lot, so it hasn't become an overused gimmick or anything, but it's just kind of like, yeah, he really does his own funky little thing. So, really great second episode. I really like the two characters interacting. Right now it's looking like, okay, maybe it's going to be something, maybe sort of like a Murder of the Week, except that this episode 2 does carry over to episode 3. So, we're not sure, but it might be going from case to case sort of anime, and not necessarily, okay, we're moving towards a story, but it's presenting itself in a very fun way, where it's fun to watch the characters interacting as they are, and while I'm not sure I could call the mystery in and of itself, if you described it in and of itself as something that would be like super compelling, it's the way they present it that's actually really great and fun. So, good series. Liking it so far. The Great Cleric, episode 2. Hard to say what to think about it. It's okay. At a minimum. Like, there's some neat ideas in there that are like, yeah, I can kind of get with that, but at the same time, it's a little strange. I guess we don't have a good feel for why the economy of the world is the way it is, so to speak. Part of it is our main character doesn't know, but at the same time, it's like, okay, if he didn't know that, would it actually make sense to call his stuff? Like, you could say his skills are in high demand, but the show hasn't established that he's bringing anything that is particularly new or out there, so it kind of means that he really just doesn't understand the value of his skill, so to speak. And, you know, I guess there's an element to it where, you know, like, okay, so, like, if you go out to some remote village and you help them dig wells and build bridges and stuff like that, even though there's possibilities that might not always be the best thing to do per se, Um, yeah, because I remember hearing a story about how, like, people went out to a remote village and taught them how to dig a well, but when they came back, like, years or a decade later or something, no new wells had been dug, and they were only ever using that one well. And I guess they also said that local warlords were, like, charging people to use it or something like that. And I don't know. I guess the point is, I guess that's the two sides of the thing: how valuable is well versus people who would go out there and help build a well anyways. If you have two kind of people like that, then I guess that makes sense in the kind of economy they're describing there, and maybe it's setting up something sort of like that. In which case, I would have expected there to be something like, oh, yes, and then there's people who make it their life's work to try to go place to place to help people or something like that. But I don't know. I kind of feel like if something like that existed, then what our main character is doing would be problematic, because you would have, like, guilds in place that would start, like, turning on or something from a storytelling perspective. So the economy feels a little wonky, which kind of makes it feel a little artificially set up for our character. But, kind of have to hold gear, because it's not like they've officially established most of this stuff. A lot of this is just me describing things that are kind of how they feel. So I don't know what to think of it, but we'll need to see more. Let's see, the most heretical last boss queen, from Villainess to Savior, episode 2. I guess kind of a follow-up to the previous episode. And not bad from a shoujo perspective. I'm trying to think from the original idea if it's there or not, and it's kind of okay. It explored a little bit more, giving us a better understanding of some of that stuff. But like I said, the difference from this one from like a previous ones has usually been sort of the tone and the approach, and this one, it's floated a little bit away from that, but it's still leaning very heavily in the direction of that original tone from the first episode. I'm trying to remember how the second episode finished, but for the most part, we're there, and it is what it is. Rurouni Kenshin 2023, episode 2. Kind of like what I said from episode 1, it's definitely more intended to be a serious show. And it's kind of interesting because some of these characters, well, I wasn't like the biggest fan of the original show. I don't even know if I watched all of it. I know I at least watched a lot of it, and I have vague recollections and feelings about how some of the stuff happened. And that's why I can feel that this one is tonally different. And it's interesting to have that conscious, but for anybody watching this for the first time, hopefully you weren't sold on some of the ideas on what the people maybe told you about the original show, unless they told you about the more serious aspects of the original show. And maybe you're enjoying this because it seems pretty good. Although it's again really hard for me to kind of judge it in isolation, because I'm comparing. Oh well, but yeah, nice episode 2, I think. I'll try to remember when episode 3 airs this week to think of it more as a, okay, here's a third episode moment. Would this do? Would this sell? As in, would somebody watching this say, yeah, I want to continue watching this? Actually, based on episode 2, I would say maybe I think people could have a good idea and say, yeah, I'm interested in seeing more. But I guess we'll have to see once episode 3 comes around. Reign of the Seven Spellblades, episode 2. What happened in this one? That. I'm trying to think if anything jumps out at me as, oh yes, this was deliberately fun. I think there were small elements of it that were playing around that I'm like, yeah, kind of enjoying this. But how well am I remembering where it ended? If it's really set up interesting stuff, I guess, some interesting things happening. But from a story perspective, it's kind of hard to tell what I'm going to feel about this show long run, I guess. Well, oh, it's okay. My unique skill makes me OP even at level 1. Episode 2. Fun episode. It's an okay series as far as I can tell. There's really not much to it. But I think, like I mentioned for the first episode, it feels like maybe you don't completely watch this one for a lot of the standard isekai tropes. Maybe the slightly more uncommon, I guess it feels a little more homely. I mean, it's not completely, oh, let's settle down and make a home. There definitely seems to be some building up related to that, but at the same time, it definitely feels like it's a sliver of that homeliness at this moment, and we'll have to see longer term if that's actually the case. Next up, Am I Actually the Strongest? Episode 3. Another. I'd say the series is being okay as well. It's hard to tell if it's really got a forward direction per se, because things are just sort of happening, and while there is a forward progression, it's sort of like, I'm not really sure what this show is planning to do with all the stuff that it's doing. It did some things that are kind of interesting, slightly different takes on isekai sorts of stuff. I don't know if I want to go into much more detail than that, but, you know, it felt like the episode was mostly more lighthearted or goofy than I guess you may think, which is probably fine. I think it's not necessarily out of character for the show to actually feel that way, but I'm not sure what the future of the show is supposed to look like. I guess some interesting stuff happened at the end of episode 3, but again, I don't really know the direction. Ooh. So, Classroom for Heroes, episode 2. This was actually a surprisingly great episode. And if I were to try to summarize as why, there's some risk to this episode where I'm not sure if this is the series setting up good stuff, or if it accidentally unloaded stuff that a lot of other series normally build up to have happen later on. Like, it didn't feel rushed or anything like that, but I do worry if it did that, or if it's got even more and better stuff coming from it. But in terms of the episode standing alone as it is, it had some actual good character moments in it that are actually highly relevant to the entire theme of the show. I'm not sure how to say it more than that, but for the most part, I thought it was really great. If you're curious about the character that was a main focal point of the first episode, she was actually pretty nice here in episode 2. I feel like they didn't get rid of or undermine the things that made her interesting in the first episode per se, as just kind of a standalone character. And in terms of interacting with other people, she's becoming a lot nicer, and there was something very pleasant about seeing that. And like I said, it looked like that was what episode 1 tried to set up for us. But it's weird because episode 2, you know, if it is supposed to be something that's more of an underlying theme for the whole show, or the start of something that's like related to all that, then it's kind of strange, because usually, you know, you either do something like this later in the series, or this is your first episode, you establishing what you're doing, so it may be a little late. But again, a lot of high praise for the episode. I was thoroughly satiated by having put the time into watching it. Jobless Reincarnation, Season 2, Episode 2. I get the feeling I don't have a good feeling for everything. And parts of this are probably that I binge watched Season 1. I don't know how long ago that was. I probably don't remember the intricate details too well, especially details at like the end, which would have been the latest stuff I saw, but you know, maybe I remember some of the details but not of the others. And because of this, I think I had a not so great of a read on how Season 2 Episode 1 ended, because Season 2 Episode 2, you know, was at a interestingly different but not too different place, so to speak. And nice things happened in the episode. I kind of appreciated it. The part of me wants to rewatch some of, well, maybe all of season 1 to try to get a better remembrance on the intricate details in terms of what characters were able to do what. Because right now, I get the impression that Rudius is deliberately going for something that isn't like, oh yes, he's the most kick-ass, badass fighter around. And I don't remember him thinking that, but also him also thinking that. So, kind of in a weird place where, he could get a little overconfident, which was one of his major character flaws in the first season. And I don't know that they're setting things up so that he would do that or see it this way, but it's really hard to get a read. It's enjoyable. I'm just mostly concerned about my own inability to properly read into things, I suppose, or follow it as closely as I maybe think I should. Sorry, I got some burp hiccups going on there. Very annoying. Psalm 100, Bucket List of the Dead. So, episode 2. So, compared to episode 1, it was interesting that episode 2, I thought episode 1 kind of ended at where I thought, where episode 2, I guess, actually ended, so to speak. In other words, I thought that there are certain things that were maybe kind of roughly established, and this episode would maybe begin with some of that stuff being fully fleshed out, as opposed to this episode ending with that stuff being fully fleshed out. And it's not necessarily bad. It's just strange, I suppose. And maybe this could just be more me, just apparently not reading a lot of the anime correctly. And reading doesn't mean like reading the words, but rather, kind of like fortune-telling reading or something like that. Just getting a good read on what the show's trying to do, saying it's doing, implying it's doing. Yeah. But overall, entertaining enough. I guess it's just a question of where's it going to go from here, because it set up some our main character with some strong ideas and thoughts, but it very deliberately set up some counter thoughts to go along with it. And I guess I was thinking that stuff was maybe not spoiler, but I had a coworker that didn't want to hear that detail, and maybe it's a little more spoiler than I thought. But the entire point is, it's not just like he's completely aimless. It's definitely trying to contrast some of his thoughts and experiences with other stuff. And it may be in an interesting way. And I don't know how much more I want to comment on that, because I don't know what's spoiler or not right now for this show. But it's curiosity. Dark Gathering, episode 2. If there's anything about this episode I would say was definitely good, it would be, so one fear from the first episode is, are these characters mean-spirited? And there are elements of the second episode that say, well, maybe that element is there, but it doesn't seem to be a constant driving force. Like, it doesn't seem like it exists in order for us to laugh about how much the main character keeps suffering. It seems to be more of a thing that gets put into place to, just kind of adjust the directory so the plot moves in the correct direction. And probably one of the best quotes. So, like, if the idea is, okay, so our main character's spiritually sensitive, but the spirits are really attracted to him, they can't stop themselves from coming to him. And you have the little girl who can see spirits and is hunting them for some reason, and you have the mysterious older sister type character who is also kind of a family friend type character. I forget her relationship to everybody. Maybe was the girl her niece or something like that, so then that would make her the aunt. It's really hard to say, but she's kind of a hard read. But if the idea was, okay, so the idea here, one of the things that was really good is you have them, and so the idea is, okay, he's going to get forced in a situation where he experiences something supernatural. He's probably put in danger, and the little girl is heavily involved with him getting saved. I guess, as one line in the movie, in this episode put it, this danger was something that was going to happen to him regardless of whether or not they were there. And this isn't just something they said, this is something we, the audience, feels, and that makes it feel a lot better. Like, even though some of those elements are there, it's like, yeah, I feel like the show's justifying itself pretty well. Now, whether or not it's interesting from there on, it's hard to say. It's not a bad episode. First episode wasn't a bad episode. Just curious to see where it's going to go after that. Sweet Reincarnation, episode 4. Not necessarily a bad episode, but I guess there's a weakness to the show where the fundamental premise of, he's a genius pastry chef who's been reincarnated in an isekai. Well, they're not really delivering on the pastry chef part of it, and the far out goal is questionable. When those elements pop up, they're very fun. And what I mean by the goal is like, oh yes, we want to make their very own land of sweets. I'm like, it sounds stupid. Like somebody having an impractical goal, like, I want to sleep on a cloud made out of marshmallows. It's like, to a certain degree you can say okay, but at the other degree, if the cloud were made of marshmallows, they would fall to the ground. If they were floating up in the air, they wouldn't necessarily have to be marshmallows, and chances are if you slept on a cloud full of marshmallows, they'd probably taste like human sweat, and it's just like there's a bunch of levels of complete impracticality to that, where like, Land of Sweets, that sounds more like the current island they are in the One Piece Blu-ray DVD release. They were in a land of sweets, literally. And it's that, even that sounded pretty impractical. It's a fucking universe with devil fruit powers where somebody could probably magic a house made out of gingerbread from thin air. Or from thick air, who knows. The rules in One Piece get to be whatever they really want to be, but, yes, well, we made this special house. Highly doubt that would actually be practical and whatever. And this show, while trying to keep a kind of grounding in what it's doing, is also, that dream doesn't make any sense. It's like, and maybe it's just being put a bad way, but a place where anybody can come and find something sweet that they would enjoy. I mean, maybe that's the general idea, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it's even connected to that, and that's the problem. And then other times there's little bits of it, and our main character's interactions with other people is very interesting. So it's just a weird set of contradictions, I suppose. It's okay, it's not bad, but, it's definitely got its weaknesses. Level 1 Demon Lord and One Room Hero, Episode 3. Like I say, the fantasy elements of it kind of aren't there. Fantasy elements that exist in a modernized sort of world. I think it's like an artificially modernized one where it's like, instead of having a coal reactor making electricity for an entire city or something like that, they have their magic reactor, but it's still something that's supposed to look like a modern Japan, essentially, but a modern, city. And so those fantasy elements aren't, like, prominent, but they are quite notable, and so it's just more interesting, again, as a more sort of slice of life. I really do like the Demon Lord character. They have a very heartwarming approach to a whole lot of stuff, where it's just like, I really appreciate seeing them on the screen and curious about what they're going to do. But it's definitely something that's more like a really weird slice of life than it is fantasy or isekai per se. So, interesting mix, but I'm definitely liking it as of episode 3. And we learned more about my favorite character, and I don't know that we learned much, but what we did learn is just like, oh, that's kind of amusing. What's up with that? Alright, so outside of that, I've not been playing any Dead by Daylight this whole week. I'm not giving up on the game, because I do want to get back in. First of all, Nicolas Cage, again, looks really funny. I'm going to want to level him up. And I do still have the goal of leveling up all the survivors now, and getting all the perks on them, and then I've reached my long-term goal. Like, that was the goal when I originally started. So, like, well, let's start getting perks I want onto the characters. And if I get all the perks on all the characters, you know, that will be goal. And granted, I could have used the event to get blood points a little bit faster. My interests weren't quite there. My focus wasn't quite there. My energy wasn't quite there. It's all good. It's been mostly in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, as most of y'all should know. And as for my progress there, it didn't finish, but it's definitely starting to see things line up for eventually I'm just going to finish the game. And what that means is I've gotten all of the armor pieces. It's possible I missed some, but I think I went through all the lists and I have all the armor pieces now. I've made a list of caves and wells and wills, and I created a list of side quests I had not started just yet, and I finished a couple of them tonight. And so I think at this point all that remains is me basically completing all those things. You know, I do want to find all the caves and find all the wells, and I guess I've decided I do want to finish the compendium, although that may turn out being once I get to a point where I'm done taking pictures of stuff and I make a list of all the stuff and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to look for half these things. That's when I'll start buying stuff, and I do have to do that for like some of the mini boss monsters, I'm pretty sure. But I think I can spend rupees to eventually reach the end of that one. It's going to be a lot of rupees if I try to do that, which is why I'm looking for shortcuts I can make along the way. But I want to finish all the side adventures and all the side quests and complete looking at stuff on the main map and then wrap it all up, I think. And that may be another week or two, especially if there's other stuff I need to do. So, for example, Pokemon Scarlet Violet. This weekend, I think, I should probably double check those dates. This weekend, I do believe, is the next 7-star raid has been announced. Like, I did get Delphox, don't worry about that. I hope I'm remembering their name right. So, next up is Rillaboom, and I might want to train up some Pokemon for that. And if I do that, then, you know, I should probably fire that up and train them up, like, tomorrow and or Wednesday or something like that. So, you know, there might be a little bit of a pause in Tears of the Kingdom, but it is definitely getting so close. Like, not so close that I can reach out and touch the I'm done with it stick, I guess. But close enough that I can start seeing that stick, and every action I'm taking now is me seeing that distance shrink more and more. Sorry about the burp hiccup stuff. It's really quite annoying. But outside that, yeah, not sure what else to think. But, you know, stuff's stuff. So, I guess I'll wrap things up. Thanks for listening to me talk about all this stuff. Even though it's maybe, I've seen some people call summer quieter, there's still a lot of good anime there, I think. I'm at least going to be pleased with some of the stuff that's shown. But, yeah, let's wrap up. Y'all, have a nice week.